Two images disappeared from two World Cup jerseys. One was 7 small stars, the other was a painting of a battle fought more than 200 years ago, and somehow those two removals ended up raising the same uncomfortable question: how much of a nation's identity is FIFA willing to allow onto a football shirt? Because when Egypt and Haiti arrived on the road to the 2026 World Cup, both discovered that symbols they considered part of their history had suddenly become unacceptable. Officially, these were simple kit regulations. Officially, this was about consistency. Officially, this was just FIFA enforcing rules. But the deeper people looked, the more complicated the story became. And the reason is that these were not random images. They represented victories, memories, national pride, and in one case, a revolution that changed world history. The Egypt story appears straightforward at first. In fact, FIFA would probably argue it is one of the easiest decisions they have ever made. For decades, Egypt's national team proudly displayed 7 gold stars above their crest. Those stars were not decorative. Each one represented an Africa Cup of Nations title, 7 championships, 7 moments of continental glory, and for Egyptian supporters, those stars were not merely symbols. They were proof that Egypt had dominated African football for generations, proof that their achievements mattered, proof that their history deserved recognition. The problem is that FIFA sees those stars differently. Under FIFA regulations, stars displayed on national team jerseys are generally reserved for World Cup victories. The meaning is supposed to be universal: 1 star, 1 World Cup. Simple. Instantly recognizable, no confusion. From FIFA's perspective, allowing every nation to add stars for regional tournaments would create chaos. Different meanings, different standards, different interpretations. The symbol would lose its clarity, and when viewed through that lens, FIFA's argument seems logical. Even many neutral observers admitted that the organization was not inventing a new rule specifically for Egypt. The regulation already existed. The federation knew it existed. The expectations were clear, so when Egypt was required to remove the stars, FIFA's position appeared defensible. Unpopular perhaps, but defensible. Yet that explanation created a different problem, because while FIFA viewed the stars as a technical violation, millions of Egyptian fans viewed them as recognition of achievements that FIFA itself did not create. The Africa Cup of Nations is not a minor tournament. It is the highest level of international football on an entire continent. For generations of players, winning it represented the greatest accomplishment of their careers. So why should those victories suddenly become invisible? Why should a World Cup title be considered worthy of permanent recognition, while 7 continental championships are treated as something that must be erased? And that is where the argument began to shift, because the discussion was no longer about stars. It was about who gets to decide which accomplishments matter. Egypt's case exposed a tension that has existed inside international football for years. FIFA sits at the center of the sport. It governs the biggest tournament. It controls the most powerful platform. And because it controls the platform, it often controls the symbols that appear on it. That authority is enormous. But Egypt's controversy was still, at its core, a dispute over sporting achievements. The Haiti story was something else entirely. And this is where things become far more difficult, because Haiti was not trying to celebrate a football tournament. Haiti was trying to remember a revolution. The image that appeared on Haiti's kit was linked to the Battle of Vertières, a battle fought in 1803, a battle that became one of the defining moments in Haiti's struggle for independence. For Haitians, it is not simply a historical event. It is a foundational story, a symbol of resistance, a symbol of freedom, a symbol of a people fighting against slavery and colonial domination. It occupies a place in national memory that goes far beyond sport. And yet, when the design came under review, FIFA reportedly determined that the imagery violated rules concerning political messages and political symbolism. The artwork had to go. Just like Egypt's stars, removed, gone, and immediately the reaction was completely different, because unlike the Egyptian case, there was no debate about tournament regulations, no discussion about competitive records, no argument over the meaning of stars. Instead, people began asking a much larger question: how does a historical event become political? And more importantly, who gets to decide? Supporters of FIFA's position pointed out that governing bodies face impossible challenges when drawing lines. Allow one historical historical image and suddenly every federation wants exceptions. Allow one political interpretation and another country demands equal treatment. The organization needs consistency. It needs neutrality. It needs rules that apply broadly rather than selectively. That is the strongest defense of FIFA's position, and it deserves acknowledgement because international sport contains countless disputes over identity, history, borders, conflicts, and nationalism. Once exceptions begin, where do they end? It is a fair question, but Haiti's critics had a problem. The more people learned about the image, the harder it became to separate it from Haitian identity itself. Because the Battle of Vertières is not some obscure political slogan. It is part of the country's origin story. It is woven into how Haiti understands itself. Removing it did not feel like removing a campaign message. To many Haitians, it felt like removing history. And then another detail emerged. Earlier in 2026, Haiti had reportedly encountered similar issues involving international sporting imagery and representation. Suddenly, this no longer looked like a one-off disagreement. People began connecting dots, maybe unfairly, maybe accurately, but the questions kept growing. Why does Haiti keep finding itself in these situations? Why do symbols connected to its history repeatedly become controversial? Why do institutions seem comfortable celebrating some historical narratives while becoming nervous around others? Those questions spread far beyond football, and that is when the controversy started evolving into something much bigger than jerseys, because what both stories shared was not the specific symbol, it was the collision between institutional authority and national identity. Egypt wanted recognition for achievements that mattered to Egyptians. Haiti wanted recognition for history that mattered to Haitians. FIFA responded with regulations, policies, standards, compliance, and in both cases the symbols disappeared. The organization would likely argue that this proves neutrality. The rules were applied, the regulations were followed, the system worked, but critics saw something different. They saw a system that recognizes certain forms of history while excluding others, a system where the most visible stage in world football increasingly belongs to FIFA itself. And that perception created another problem: trust. Because trust depends on people believing that institutions understand what matters to them. When supporters feel that symbols of identity can be removed by distant administrators, trust begins to weaken. Not collapse overnight, not disappear completely, but weaken little by little, decision by decision, controversy by controversy. And the timing could hardly be worse. The 2026 World Cup is already surrounded by debates. Questions about costs, questions about access, questions about logistics, questions about who benefits from the tournament and who gets left behind. Every new controversy arrives in an environment where skepticism is already growing. That means even relatively small decisions can suddenly feel much larger. A jersey becomes a symbol, a regulation becomes a statement, a removal becomes a message, whether FIFA intends it or not. And perhaps the strangest part of this entire story is what happened next. The symbols became more powerful after they disappeared. Most football fans outside Egypt probably never spent much time thinking about 7 African championship stars. Now they know exactly why they mattered. Most football fans outside Haiti probably never discussed the Battle of Vertières. Now many are learning about it for the first time. The absence created attention, the removal created awareness, the ban created visibility, and that outcome is deeply ironic because the purpose of regulation is usually to simplify things, to create clarity, to reduce confusion. Yet in these cases, the regulations may have done the opposite. They transformed forgotten details into international conversations. They transformed jersey designs into debates about identity. They transformed kit approvals into arguments about history itself, which leaves one final question hanging over the entire controversy. Was FIFA simply enforcing rules? Or did the organization accidentally reveal something much bigger about how global institutions interact with national memory? Reasonable people will disagree. Some will say the rules are necessary. Others will say the rules are too rigid. Some will defend consistency. Others will see erasure. But regardless of where someone stands, one reality remains impossible to ignore. 2 symbols disappeared, and somehow those missing symbols became louder than they ever were before. Because sometimes the most powerful image is not the one people can see. It is the one they were told they could not.